It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Robert A. Tripke DMD. He's had educational programs that have influenced thousands of general dental practices by enhancing the quality of care and dramatically altering the economic status of those practices. Bob is the author of Behind the Dental Chair, How Smart Dentists Crack the Code and Build a Dream Practice, implemented an organizational approach to non-surgical periodontal therapy in his Chenoa, Illinois practice, which is what, about an hour from Chicago?
About 90 minutes, maybe a little more.
An hour and a half, okay. And where he's practiced since 1987, which was the same year I graduated, due to the marked elevation in standard of care for his patients, as well as a huge positive financial impact on his practice. Shortly thereafter, he began educating general dentists in these methods and protocols. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Tripke has provided structured periodontal therapy training with the newest, most effective techniques available. His program is recognized in the industry as the pinnacle of soft tissue management. A passionate, animated, and empowering speaker, Dr. Tripke's educational programs have influenced thousands of general dental practices by enhancing the quality of care and dramatically altering the economic status of those practices. You know, I got to tell you, there used to be 9 specialties recommended by or approved by the ADA up there by you in Chicago. They just introduced the 10th one, dental anesthesiologist. But I would say out of all the specialties, perio has changed the most. I mean, when we got out of school, it was all surgical. And then about 10 years out of school, they said, let's treat it all with extractions and titanium. And now they're looking at all those implants, and 20 to 40% of them are ailing and failing with peri-implantitis. So now I'm seeing the pendulum swing back to old-fashioned periodontal surgery. Where do you think we're at in perio these days?
Well, there's so many things that have changed in perio. I agree with you. And by the way, before I forget, I appreciate you making me 7 years younger than I am, but I actually started in my practice in 1980.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 87 is when I started the perio program.
Okay, but you have more hair than me, so you've got to be younger. So young girl, she graduated, let's say she graduated this year, and she's looking at a molar with 5 or 6 millimeter pockets, and the old guy up the street telling her just treat it with titanium. But then she's looking at all the implants, all the perio teeth that were treated with titanium, and they got peri-implantitis. So it's kind of it's very confusing periodontally.
Yeah, well, what we've done for years in my practice is, I mean, a 5-6 millimeter pocket to me is not an extraction. We don't take teeth like that out. I mean, I'm not saying I never do, but it's not, as a general rule, that's not what we do. We develop a structured periodontal program for the patient, customized for that patient, and we have adjuncts to the program. And we have rinses we have the patient use at home that break down the biofilm, which never anything has ever been able to do that. I mean, I was married to chlorhexidine for 25 years in my practice. And the only thing that happened with chlorhexidine is my hygienist got ticked off because of the stain, and my patients got ticked off because of the stain. But you couldn't control the disease with it. And you can't control the disease with antibiotics either, for a lot of reasons. Biofilms are refractory to antibiotics, so that doesn't do anything either. And plus the bacteria develop resistance to it, so there's another issue. But we have a product in our practice now, and I don't mean to go product on you here, but if PerioProtect is a product that I use in my office for anybody in my office that's had an implant placed has to have PerioProtect used at home. And it's a product that you take a couple of accurate alginates, couple of accurate pour-ups, and fill out a work order, send in the pocket depths to a lab, and they customize and calibrate those pocket depths in the trays that are made. They're clear, and they hold the oxygen at a level that you send in based on your pocket depth measurements, and it holds the oxygen at that level for as long as you want it there. Now, this is a 1.7% hydrogen peroxide gel. And every time I talk about this at a presentation, very few people have ever even heard of this. And I guess if you wanted to use this long term, I guess you might see a little whitening of the teeth with it, but it's not designed for that. What it will do is we're dealing with anaerobic bacteria here. Anaerobic bacteria don't like oxygen. It's like holding a cross up to Dracula. And if it's the most common sense approach I've ever seen in my life to treating perio, because if you can expose these bacteria or the biofilm to oxygen for extended periods of time, you can break it down and control it over long periods of time. And that's essentially what's happening. The oxygen stimulates new cell development, additional vascularization in the site of healing. The tensile strength of the collagen in the healing is much higher, and it tears down and breaks down the biofilm, which is what we're trying to do after all anyway. So it's an amazing product, and we don't have to deal with antibiotics. When you give somebody an antibiotic, if it's systemic, you're going to flood the bloodstream with this thing, and every piece of tissue and every organ in the body gets exposed to the antibiotic. That's not a good thing. With this product, we can stay away from the antibiotics. We're going to use something called oxygen. All I want them to do is put it in the tray, and I want them to put in it twice a day, 15 minutes each for the first 2 weeks, and then once a day for 15 minutes indefinitely. And the results are phenomenal with this product. They're absolutely amazing what it does for the condition of the tissue and maintaining the pocket depth. And we're doing it look at athletes, Howard. What do they do when they got injuries? They go in hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and it promotes healing. And that's, you want to look at it that way. That's kind of what we're doing here.
Well, when you say you don't want to go all product on me, I have no fear of products because number one, PerioProtect isn't paying us money. You're not paying me. I'm not paying you. We're all just talking hearts. But if you took away about 50 dental companies, I would be sitting on a rug outside with stuff I bought from Home Depot. So when dentists always tell, I have this problem in Dental Town when people will report a post, say, well, that guy works for a company. And he makes profit. I'm like, well, what are you, a volunteer public health dentist? How come you can make a profit off a root canal, but somebody that works at a PerioProtect can't make a profit? Right. But you obviously are passionate about PerioProtect.
I'm very passionate about it. It's the most common sense approach to perio I've ever seen. And I've never enjoyed putting people on antibiotics. So this replaces
they're out of St. Louis. Who's the owner of PerioProtect?
Oh, Lord.
It's the Lord?
No.
I was not expecting that.
Be the way it works.
I said, who's the owner of PerioProtect? And he said the Lord.
I believe his name is Keller.
I believe his name's Keller. Out of St. Louis.
Yes.
So you are saying that due to the biofilm, antibiotics aren't going to get in there. You don't like chlorhexidine because of the staining. But you like this PerioProtect, this making trays. We have 400 courses on Dental Town, and they've been viewed almost 1 million times. You should make an hour online CE course of what you're actually doing so they can see it. But visually talk about it. So when someone has perio, you take alginate impressions. Do you scan it? Do you make the trays? Do they make the trays?
Well, first thing we're going to do is go through the diagnosis and treatment planning. Then we're going to go through the scaling and root planing procedures that we go through, irrigation, scaling, root planing. Might want to use a little laser treatment. That depends with patient to patient. But when we get to the point of maintenance with this patient, I've got to have a way that I can give them something to take home and use that is not something that's going to cause any problems with the rest of their body, and at the same time is going to be extremely effective with this disease. And again, to me, if you're dealing with a bacteria that doesn't like oxygen, then make it look at oxygen, and you know what's going to happen to it. And that's all we're doing here. It's the 1.7% hydrogen peroxide gel, just the vehicle. That's all it is. But then once we're through with the scaling and root planing, and we decide I want them on maintenance with this, we'll take a couple of accurate alginates, make a couple of accurate pour-ups. And then, you got a little work order you fill out and send in the pocket depth measurements to the lab. And there's 5 labs, 6 labs that make these trays now. And they will custom make the trays and calibrate them based on your pocket depth measurements to hold the gel at that level.
And what lab is making your trays?
The one I use is the one in St. Louis.
So you actually use PerioProtect. You actually use the company to make the trays.
Well, they have a lab in St. Louis, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. And the owner of that is Dwayne C. Keller, DMD.
Yep.
PerioProtect in St. Louis, Missouri. That is so. How long have you been using PerioProtect?
Oh, I don't know, probably a year and a half, 2 years now.
And what are your thoughts?
An unbelievable product. I've never seen not only the results, but the sustainable results that I've gotten with this. And I'll tell you what really makes it work. Patients don't like to be put on antibiotics. A lot of them won't even go fill the script. They may tell you they filled it, but they didn't. And with this product, I don't have to talk about antibiotics. And when I tell them that, they act relieved that we're not going to make them take an antibiotic, because they know some people get sick with the antibiotic. They get reactions to it, this type of thing. There's nothing with this. It's as inert a product as you're ever going to find. So the patients are very receptive to it.
I had a full head of hair in a 6-pack. I took one prescription of antibiotics, and look at me now. It just it almost killed me. But when I was in school, I was formally taught at the University of Missouri Kansas City that gum disease is all related to teeth, because if you extract all their teeth, the gums heal up perfectly and they're all fine. Okay, well, when you extract those teeth and put implants in, you're still looking at periimplantitis. So what?
Right.
So what is your view on that? Periodontal around teeth versus implants.
Well, I mean, I'd always prefer to save the patient's tooth if it's something that can be done. I mean, I'm not going to play hero with some of these teeth. I mean, you got 8, 9, 10, 12 millimeter pockets. I'm not going there. But 5, 6 millimeter pockets? No, I mean that's not even an issue to get it under control through the standardized traditional scaling and root planing procedures. But then we got to have a way to maintain it out of the office, and this is the vehicle to do it.
So do you think these kids are coming out of school? They're young. They're 25. Podcast listeners are very young. Talk to them about periodontal therapy. I mean, do you think their periodontal training is adequate? What do you think they should be doing to develop their knowledge in a huge specialty of periodontist?
Well, the first thing it's got to start with is something that I wasn't educated on as much as I wished I'd been, and that is how important it is to probe these patients. And we probe them in our dental office. We probe every patient, have since 1987, 6 points per tooth, every hygiene visit, unless it's a therapy appointment. We're probing these patients. So, and you have to stay on top of it that way. But once you probe them, I mean, we're talking about standardized, traditional, non-surgical scaling and root planing procedures. But there's so much technology out there today for magnetostrictive and piezo technologies out there today for hygienists to treat this disease, that they can almost get away almost exclusively from hand instrumentation. Because there are a lot of problems with that too. I mean, we get carpal tunnel issues with hygienists all the time with hand instrumentation. You do that enough over a number of years, you're going to probably have some form of issues with it. May not need surgery, but you're probably going to tell people you have symptoms. So you can get away from a lot of that with just the technology alone. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you need I didn't have a great background in perio when I started doing this in my office. But I got introduced to this by a company back in 1987, and I know you know the company. The name of it was ProDentech, or Professional Dental Technologies. They no longer exist in that form any longer. But that's how I got introduced to this. And when I actually got a flyer in the mail from these people in my office, and I read the flyer, and I was looking out the window of my private office, and as I looked out the window, the following words came out of my mouth. I said, "Where in the hell has this been all my life?" Because I said, this is my answer to everything. It solves every problem to me in a dental practice. It solves the busyness problem. It solves the quality of care problem. It solves the financial problems. It solves the morale problems, because everybody in that office is involved in this system when it's in place. From the front desk all the way through, even the dental assistants are involved in this. So everybody, the morale just goes through the ceiling. And everybody benefits from it too, financially.
And how do they benefit financially?
Well, I'll give you an example. My hygienist, when I started this in 1987, she was fresh out of hygiene school. And I know when I say these numbers, people on the other end of this conversation eyebrows are going to go up in the air, and they're going to say that's not possible. But in 1987, fresh out of hygiene school, she was making $8.50 an hour. Okay? Now, and all things are relative too. I mean, when you look at where we are today, I mean, what's the cost of a gallon of milk compared to what it was then? $1.25, and now it's $5.50 or $7, depending on what kind you buy. But it's all relative that way. But $8.50 an hour, Howard. Now, I put the perio program in place. I said, run it. I want you to run this system for 3 months because I got to see what we're doing with it versus what we were doing without it. And then we're going to sit down and I'm going to, after work one night, and I did this with all the employees, not just the hygienist. And I said, we'll sit down and I'll figure out what's fair in terms of compensation. This hygienist did such a fantastic job with this system and that practice that 3 months later, I sat her down one night after work. I gave her, again, $8.50 an hour. I gave her a $5 an hour raise. Now, I'm here to tell you there aren't many people in dentistry getting more than 50% an hour raise in terms of dollars. It isn't happening. Nobody gets that kind of a raise. But she deserved it. I mean, within 2 weeks, she had a new car, and within 2 months, she had a new apartment. I mean, it changed her life, and she deserved it.
They say there's 211,000 Americans who have an active license practice dentistry. Probably 150,000 are general dentists, 32 hours a week or more. 30,000 are specialists, 32 hours a week or more. Of those 150,000 general dentists in the United States right now, how many of them do you think have a perio program?
You want my honest answer?
I do.
Okay.
This is Dentistry Uncensored.
I will tell you it's less than 10%.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Way less than 10%. You know what, Howard? When I started speaking on this topic in 1988, it was the fall of 88, I started speaking. I honest to God thought that I would talk about this. After I started going out and talking to people about this, I thought I was going to do this for about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 on the outside. And I said to myself, by then, everybody's going to have figured this out. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I mean, it doesn't increase your workload. It reduces it. It allows the hygienist to have all the time they need to treat every patient. They're not restricted in time. In fact, in my office, they set their own time. What do you need to treat this case? You tell me. You get it. I don't care what it is. And the fee is going to be based on how long what it takes to treat the patient anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's I ran the system with her, and I mean, that pay raise to me, I never thought in my lifetime I'd ever give anybody a $5 an hour raise. I don't care what they were making. I mean, that to me was astronomical, but there aren't a lot of dental offices doing this today. And I still, even when I speak today, I used to speak, I mean, one 25-year stretch, I was given 40 seminars a year for 25 straight years. And that's a lot. And you can't keep talking to people about this, about anything for that long a period of time. Number one, if you don't believe in it, and number two, if you're not passionate about it. There's no way to talk about it. You can't keep doing it. And it shows. But anybody who sees me speak knows how crazy I am about this system in a dental practice. I spoke to a group of dental students, senior dental students, last November at a dental school, not at the school. It was off-site. I bought them all the beer they could drink and all the pizza they could eat one night and put them in a room. And I had other ulterior motives to talk to them. But the one thing I wanted to do is speak to them about this system. And after the presentation was over, there had to be, I don't know, they weren't all there. I didn't get the whole class, but I probably got 25 of them there. And of that 25 of them, at least 15 or 20 of them walked up to me and said, nobody's ever told us about this. Nobody's ever told us that if we put a patient in a hygiene chair and we do what you just told us that we need to do, that we could make these kind of changes in their mouth and we could make this kind of money doing it. And I said, I know. They didn't teach me either. One of my colleagues, a kid he's grown up now, he's my age, but he went to dental school with me and he read the book I wrote, and he's told me, he said, listen, Bob, he said, this book should be in the hands of every senior second semester dental student in the United States. He said, they all should be reading this book. And I said, tell me about it. If I'd have known this 7 years earlier, I'd have been out of dentistry 7 years earlier. I'd have been retired laying on a beach somewhere.
Well, I posted your book on Dental Town, all my social media.
Oh, I know. I appreciate it.
It's Behind the Dental Chair, How Smart Dentists Crack the Code and Build a Dream Practice. There are two keys. It's on Amazon. There are two keys to unlock a dream practice for both dentists and their teams. The first key is to remove yourself as some participating members in those dental insurance plans you dislike the most. Do this slowly over an extended period of time. Explain to your patients that as participating members in their dental plan, you are handcuffed regarding the procedures you can offer them. The second key is to implement a structured periodontal therapy program and generate $300,000 to $400,000 per hygienist per year in the dental practice. Allow patients to make educated decisions about their care. Dr. Robert Tripke has been successfully doing it since 1987, and this book will help you crack the code too. What I don't understand is we live in the richest country in the world, and by age 65, 10% have zero teeth, times 2 missing half, and then by 74, 20% missing all their teeth, times 2 missing half. And these dentists think that, I mean, women have nightmares of losing all their teeth. Why do they find it acceptable for 20% of Americans to lose all their teeth and another 20% to lose more than half in the richest country in the world?
Well, I think what you're asking me is why don't dentists tell patients about this and teach them this so they will treat it? I mean, that's essentially what you're asking me. And the answer to that question is twofold. Number one, they have a fear of rejection. All dentists do, because you got so much rejection in dental school, you don't want any more of it. So you're afraid to say anything to anybody. No, seriously. I mean, nobody wants any more rejection. They want everybody to like them and everybody to be their best friend. Well, number one, that's never going to happen anyway. I don't care what you tell them. But the point is that they're afraid to tell Mr. Smith, who's been in the practice for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. They're afraid to tell him something that they haven't told him before, and certainly not in the way they're about to tell him. And they're so afraid of it, they're afraid he's going to ask them questions like, well, why didn't you tell me this before? And that makes them almost literally swallow their tongue to think about having to answer it. And to me, I don't care what anybody asks me. If it's going to add $300,000 to $400,000 a year per hygienist above and beyond what I'm making now in hygiene, I'll figure out a way to answer any question. That's how I feel about it, and that's what I did. But for some reason, they have that fear. They also, I personally don't think, that they really understand the actual financial benefit of something like this to a dental practice. In 1987, I was $550,000 in debt. And in today's dollars, that's $1.6 million in debt. And I know you know this, Howard, because you came into dentistry a little after I did, but it was still hanging around. Prime interest rate 1980, 21%. Prime interest rate today, 5%, maybe a little lower, okay? Unemployment in 1980 was 11%. Mortgage rates were almost 14%. Now, none of these kids getting out of dental school today have anything like that to contend with in terms of economic conditions. Those conditions were driving people away from my dental practice. They're not going to take off work to come and see me. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They can't afford to give up the money, whatever. So they're not going to do it. And it was tough to get people to come into the office, let alone generate sizable amounts of income. But I retired $1.6 million in debt in 2 years. In today's dollars, in 2 years with that system in that office in a town of 1,850 people. Now, when people tell me that they get out of dental school today and they got $300,000 to $400,000 in debt and they have no choice but to go corporate, I got a lot of problems with that. Not because I got any big, well, I may have, but that's another story. Not because I have any major problems with corporate, but I got huge problems with people feeling obligated to go into it. I mean, if somebody can walk up to you and say, you walk into the front door of this dental office right here, and I'm going to guarantee you $300,000 to $400,000 a year, every year you're in there, above and beyond what they're making now in hygiene with this system in place. I know that $300,000 debt means nothing to me anymore. That's not even a deterrent for anything. That's the ticket out of this. That's the ticket to let them choose anything they want in dentistry, is running a program like this.
So if someone's listening to you right now and they want to implement a program like this, walk them through. How would they go from hearing you right now to implementing a program?
Call me.
Call you? And what number?
309-838-8518.
So if they call you, if they call you at 309-838-8518, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna tell them? Are you gonna?
First thing I'm going to do is find out what they're doing. I mean, are they still in dental school? Are they out? Are they in private practice? How many hygienists have they got? What kind of a perio program do you got? I mean, here's one thing I can find out in a matter of seconds on a phone. Have them take and print with their software a series of these codes. I want all the 4341s, all the 4342s, all the 4910s, and all the Prophy codes.
Okay, repeat all that. Repeat all that. All the what?
Have them print all the 4341s.
Which is what? The code for what?
That's the scaling for case type 2s and 3 patients. All the 4342s, and that's scaling root plane with limited numbers of teeth, usually 1 to 3 teeth in areas of the mouth. All the 4910s, which is a perio maintenance code, and all the Prophy codes. Now, when you print all those, you're going to sit there and add them all up and find out how many total of those codes you have. And you're going to have a number there. Let's call that A. Now have your software do it again. Print the 4341s, print the 4342s, and print the 4910s. That's it. Call that B. Total them up, get a number. Now take B and divide it by A. You're going to get your perio percentage. That percentage should be 60% or above. And well over 90% of the dental practices in this country, it's way below 40%.
So you're saying 60% should be currently being treated for some form of perio?
Yeah. I think it should. That's on the low end, Howard. I mean, 75 to 90% of them have the disease. What are we talking about here? Here's a number for you that'll blow you away. 75 to 90% of them have the disease, and less than 1% of the hygiene services are towards treating perio. Less than 1%. Prophys outnumber perio therapy by 20 to 1. So we've got 80% at least of the patients, adults, having a disease. By 20 to 1, we're not treating it. They did a study, and they found that from 2004 to 2010, in that 6-year period, the incidence of periodontal disease in this country increased 5-fold. And now, that tells me nobody's doing it.
So why do you think perio would increase between 2004 and 2010?
I don't know why that 6-year period, why it showed that type of increase. I don't know. What I don't understand is why it's increasing at all in any time frame. I mean, why in the world dentists are not treating this in dental practice? And by the way, this is really going to throw some gasoline on the fire here. But I've been saying for years, speaking, that I think it's only a matter of time before insurance companies, the government, Medicare, Medicaid, I don't care, they're all going to get in on this because of the effects and the links of perio and to heart disease, stroke, diabetes, premature births, respiratory ailments, Alzheimer's, arthritis, cancer. They've linked it to every damn one of them. And here's the thing. They're losing so much money because dentists are not addressing the disease. It's a lot more money, it costs more to treat any of those systemic disorders than it does to treat perio. So they're at some point, because they have seen this and they're seeing that people with chronic diseases in this country are not getting better. And yet if we and they've done studies to show that if you treat the perio, some of these people are showing amazing turnarounds in their health. Rheumatoid arthritis symptoms are showing to be reduced by patients after they've had periodontal therapy. So they're going to get their hands in this, Howard, at some point. And I said it years ago. I've been saying this for 25 years. At some point, if dentists don't treat this, they're going to turn it over to the physicians, and they're going to tell them, "Hey, dentists don't want to treat the disease. You guys treat it." And they'll go hire the hygienist and bring them in their office, and they'll start treating it. I mean, now the dentist will start screaming, "Wait, it's an oral disease. It belongs to us." It doesn't belong to you if you're not going to treat it.
Well, I remember, who was the old ADA president or ADA executive director? I think it was like Richard Brenner or something. And do you remember him? And he went to a dental company. I think it was United Concordia or Aetna or one of the major. Oh. Do you remember him? He was.
Vaguely, I do.
Yeah, he was the executive director of the American Dental Association for like a decade. Then he went on to dental insurance, and he was showing me data that was just, I mean, a premature baby is $1 million. And one of the fastest things they're linking it to is the mother having gingivitis and perio. And they're like, my God, if we could have got her a cleaning and got that clean, because something when the body's seeing all that infection in the mouth, the body might think, this is not a good time to drop a frog and, kick that baby out. And then they're looking at a $1 million bill. And so he was saying that what he was seeing is that premature babies will drive it the fastest. I mean, that looks like the lowest hanging fruit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody looks at an infant that's going, and I have a daughter that was a preemie. Okay. We had her on a heart monitor for almost 7 months after she was born. And so in this case, I'll have to assume it had nothing to do with perio since my wife is a hygienist, but that's another story.
Tiffany's a hygienist?
But at any rate, pardon?
Tiffany's a hygienist?
Yes. Yeah, she speaks with me. Yeah, she's got a workshop in the afternoon she does to.
Have you guys ever thought about doing an online CE course? It'd be massive marketing for your program.
I've got 4 videos out there, and I'm already working with your other Howard on putting them on your site.
Well, to me, what I don't get about perio is that about women. I mean, you go to any woman and say, how much money would I have to give you to pull your front tooth and you could never replace it? She won't take $1 million.
No.
And then you say, well, what if you woke up and you lost all your teeth, like 10% due by 64 and 20% due by 74? And she says it'd be the most god-awful nightmare. And then when I say, what if you woke up and your teeth were gone and you were bald like me? At that point, they're looking at suicide. They go, I would absolutely kill myself if I had no teeth in your hair. So, and then that same America between the ages of 16 and 74 buys 13 new cars with a median average price of $33,500. So why can't this dentist sell a prevention to losing all your teeth to a woman who wouldn't give you her teeth for $1 million?
Well, because again, they're afraid of talking about something they haven't talked about before. Now, if it's a new patient, there shouldn't be any issues with that because they don't have anything to compare it to. But if it's the existing patient, they're afraid to even broach the topic because they're going to ask me questions, and I don't know how I'll answer those questions, and I don't want to be put in that box and be uncomfortable. And rather than that, I'll turn my head away from $300,000 to $400,000 a year. Now, again, I'm going to tell you, Howard, you couldn't ask me a question that I wouldn't figure out a way to answer for $300,000 to $400,000 a year. There's no way. But dentists are like that. I don't know what it is, but they have a lot of fear that way.
Yeah, I remember people are always saying, well, if your kid was exposed, what would you do if your kid came home from school and said this? And I'm like, well, maybe you should just have a conversation with your kid, instead of trying to pass some law to make it go away. Why don't you just have a conversation? Yeah, it's interesting you say that because there's 3 publicly traded dental offices that are publicly traded. There's none in America. There's none over here, but there's 2 in Australia and 1 in Singapore. And one of the reasons they said when they're looking at the American model, they say, how come with the new patient exam, the doctor spends 10 or 15 minutes and you get all this treatment, but on a recall exam, they spend no time and nothing, there's no diagnosing and treatment planning, and they can show you a model. And it's just like when a doctor goes into a new patient, why do they spend so much more time and can tell you so much more of the obvious? But then when he gets kicked to recall, they just get that what do they call recall most benign maintenance, or what do they call it?
Yeah. Recare.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Here's the problem with that situation. If people keep coming in for a recare visit, and every time they come in, the message is, Jim, you're doing a great job. You have no cavity, see in 6 months. Jim, you're doing a great job. No cavity, see in 6 months. They hear it every time they come in. You could put it on an endless loop out at the front desk and just let the damn thing play, and nobody has to even keep the names out of it to protect the innocent. But bottom line is, this is what happens. So the patient puts no value on this visit because they already know what you're going to say before they ever even get in the room. Okay? So if they got something better to do that day, I'm going to go do it. I mean, I already know what you're going to tell me. So what I got to come in there for, other than the fact because you tell me I need to, and they think they're going to come out with whiter teeth, cleaner, whiter teeth. But nobody talks about a disease process that is shortening these people's life expectancies. Nobody even broaches the topic.
And you and
I don't
I
understand it.
You and I have lived through four economic contractions: 80, 87, 2000, March of 2000, and then Lehman's Brother. But this is the first time I've lived through a contracting life expectancy. I mean, I always thought every year or two, the average American would live several months longer, and now it's been going down 3 years in a row. I mean, I didn't even see that coming. I mean, that pendulum came back. Yeah, it is amazing. A lot of people who listen to podcasts are younger than us. A lot of them are saying, the average dental student comes out of school, $283,000 in student loans, and she's seeing these Lenap lasers for, they're like $140,000, and so it's a big purchase for her. Would you recommend that she buys a $140,000 laser to treat perio?
Out of dental school? No, absolutely not. That's something you do down the road, and you'll be able to afford it down the road if that's what you want to do. But the only time I ever buy anything in my dental practice, it has to satisfy three criteria. It's got to make my job easier, it's got to make the patient's experience better, and I got to make money off of it. If it doesn't do all three of those, I'm not buying it. But when you're fresh out of dental school, you got other things that are more important than that. You can treat these people scaling, root plane irrigation. You can do the PerioProtect system to maintain them after you get them to that point. You don't have to invest that type of money right away. Now, down the road, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But getting out of dental school and investing in that stuff, no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
The easiest dollar earned is a dollar in expense saved. So if you can do it faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, you really got to think about that. You also are, you talked about PerioProtect, but you also talk about OraCare.
Yeah. OraCare is a rinse. It's activated chlorine dioxide and xylitol. And first of all, I will tell you it's antibacterial, but at that point, we're even with chlorhexidine. Now, from this point on, we're going to separate OraCare from chlorhexidine. And that is, it's also antiviral. I've got a lady in my office. She's in her early 40s. Since she was 5 years old, she's had an epidemic of cold sores. There isn't hardly 2 or 3 months go by in her life since she was 5 that she doesn't fight cold sores. They put her on all types of medications, over-the-counter, prescription. The latest was 1,000 milligrams of Valtrex twice a day. And the Valtrex was killing her pocketbook. It was also having very negative effects on her liver, and it wasn't doing a whole hell of a lot to do anything with the cold sores. So she comes into my office. She diagnoses a case type 2 perio patient. So I went ahead and treatment planned her for that and treatment planned her for PerioProtect trays when we're done, this type of thing. But I told her, I said, here's one thing we got to do. You've got issues with the cold sores. I've got something that's antiviral. Let's give it a whirl because I'm going to have you on it anyway for the perio condition you have. So I put her on the rinse. She's now a year and a half removed rinsing with that product and has never in a year and a half had a recurrence with a cold sore. So it's antiviral, antibacterial, it's antifungal, meaning denture patients with ill-fitting dentures, you see them come in, they rinse with this stuff for 5 days and the fungus is gone. It neutralizes volatile sulfuric compounds that cause bad breath. And most importantly, it breaks down the biofilm, which is what PerioProtect does too.
So what if she said, what's the difference between OraCare and PerioProtect?
Well, PerioProtect for me is going to be used and for those patients in a little more advanced situation. I mean, your more advanced case type 2s and your case type 3s are automatic. Implant patients, every one of them gets PerioProtect to protect those implants. OraCare is a standard rinse for any patient. Even in my case, even if they don't have periodontal disease, it's still an indicated use. Bad breath, antiviral, antifungal, all types of things. So it's an amazing product. It really is.
And where's OraCare out of?
Oh Lord, Lord.
Back to the Lord again.
Where is it? Yeah, I'm back to the Lord again.
Well, here's confusing to me about OraCare.
Dr. Richard Downs is the inventor, the CEO, the inventor of OraCare.
Okay.
But and I know him personally. I've met him, and he spoke at my presentation before.
I notice older docs like me, a lot of people call oral care dentist select. Have you?
Really?
Yeah. Is that?
I've never heard that.
Yeah. A lot of them, you'll start explaining the oral care and they'll say, oh, you mean dentist select.
Well, see, I don't really know that much about Dentist Select in terms of its components and everything and what it does. So I really shouldn't comment. But I do know everything I've talked to you about with oral care. It is what I said it is, and it is an amazing product because it does so many things for so many people.
This is Dentistry Uncensored, so I don't like to talk about anything anybody agrees on. I like to talk about where they disagree, and and there's a big disagreement of whether this is a communicable disease. I mean, I go into dental offices and they've seen grandma every 3 months for 10 years with perio, and they've never seen grandpa. Now, what if that was the other end of her body? What if you saw her every 3 months for chlamydia? At some point, wouldn't you say we need to see grandpa? I mean,
Exactly.
so the question, and then it seemed to me, I believe it's communicable because when you see these newspaper cases where a kid had to go to the OR and be put to sleep because he needed 8 pulpotomy chrome steel crowns. Well, I don't have to see anybody in the family. I know that didn't come from nowhere. That means mom and dad have blown out caries. Grandma's the babysitter and she's wearing an upper flipper and a lower partial and hasn't seen a dentist. You can't have a 2-year-old with that much infection unless it's living in a herd in a barn with a bunch of people teeming with Streptococcus mutans in their saliva, and they're all kissing the baby and sharing each other. So my question to you is, do you think grandma and grandpa can switch back perio? Do you think it's a contagious disease?
I absolutely do. There's not a whole lot of doubt in my mind that it is. I mean, you can't kiss somebody without that bacteria, quote unquote, being transmitted from one mouth to the next mouth. It's impossible.
They're saying 30 million bacteria and microorganisms in a regular kiss and 140 million on a deep kiss. And so I mean, it's like when I see a woman with a baby bump, I tell her, look, if you walked out in the backyard and saw a giraffe, that I mean, it came from somewhere. You just can't have a giraffe appear. And that baby, when it's born, it's not going to have any of these diseases. And then and in fact, here's some research that's way too much information. When they go into a household, your bioflora of your stool is similar to the other people living in this herd. I mean, so you're living in a herd, in a barn, and I tell her, I said, everybody that's going to touch this baby, kiss this baby, share utensils, I need to treat the whole herd. And it seems like they totally get that in Germany and Liechtenstein and Austria. But Americans, I mean, they just routinely will see somebody every 3 months for 5 years that have never seen another person living in this house. What do you think of that?
Well, no, I've discussed that with my patients before. I've discussed the fact that if you've got it, you better get your husband in here. Let me look at your husband too. There's a pretty good chance something's going on there. And I actually would be surprised if there isn't. So, but now getting them to send John into the office is the other problem here. But if you can explain to them what I found is so valuable with all this is the links with all these systemic disorders. People relate to that stuff. They relate to the fact that heart disease, stroke, diabetes, nobody wants to be involved in anything. They didn't want to own any of these things.
I'll give you 2 more examples of things I've seen regularly for 31 years in Phoenix, Arizona. This little girl's been coming to my practice every 6 months since she was 2 years old. She's never had a cavity. She's never had gingivitis. Then she goes to ASU, and she comes back, and she's got 3 cavities and gingivitis. I say, Megan, the only thing that explains this is you're swapping spit with somebody that's got cavities or gingivitis.
Yeah.
I mean, you never had this for 18 years, and their eyes get really big, and she says, I do have a boyfriend. I said, well, I think he should come in and get his cavities fixed. Same thing with the divorce deal. She was fine forever. She got divorced. She went back out on the market. She's got a new lover, and boom, out of nowhere, her disease, missing filled teeth, gingivitis, periostatus, decay rate, it all changed because she's trading spit with someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any doubt. Now, I don't know how well you can prove that today, but the anecdotal evidence is so obvious, just as you're explaining it. I mean, it's everywhere. And the way I look at this is I say, let's just pretend that we can't prove it. It's rather obvious, isn't it, when every time you bring someone in your office and they have this disease and you bring Joe, the husband, in, and Joe looks like a mirror image of that patient, why do we have to have a study to prove anything? I mean, we shouldn't even need a study. It should be automatic.
Do you think you and I are going to see a return of periodontal surgery more like it was in the 80s? I mean, now that you're doing this Perio Protect and you're doing all this, do you think quadrant gum surgeries are more likely to come back or stay away?
I hope stay away. I've never. I mean, that's a last resort for my patients, and it is a resort. I mean, sometimes you do have to do that. There's no alternative. And we talked about it earlier, and we talked about how deep the pockets are. I mean, you can only do so much with non-surgical approach. But at the same time, I don't like to go the surgical route with anything if I don't have to. That's just how I am. I try to be as conservative as I can, but it's got to fix the problem. If what I'm doing isn't fixing the problem, then we got to go the other route.
Well, what I want to remind my belief is that I'm really preventative on one rooted teeth, but you got to pay attention to two. But I'm the most three rooted teeth obviously scare me the more. I mean, a maxillary molar scares me more than incisors and canines. How do you look at three rooted teeth differently than two rooted teeth?
Well, you've got all types of situations. I mean, you've got furcation involvement. I mean, you don't have furcation involvement with single-rooted teeth. And furcations, when you start getting bone loss in that area, it just festers and becomes a very chronic problem. And ultimately, if you get a through-and-through furcation, there's not a whole lot you're going to do to restore that tooth.
So this is Dentistry Uncensored. I'm going to try to get you in trouble as best I can. Arrestin, good or bad?
Yeah.
I mean, do you like it or not like it? Is there a place for it or really not really?
I used Arrestin for many, many years. I did. I'm going to be very honest about it. I had very, very mixed results with it. I'm not saying it didn't do any good for my patients. Sometimes it did. But again, what I didn't find with Arrestin, what I didn't know then that I know now, is that this biofilm that we're talking about with perio is not something that you can just knock out with that type of a product. I mean, it's got to be something that is specific for the biofilm. And certain things will destroy the biofilm and certain things don't. And when I look back on it now, I kind of feel that may be the reason why I wasn't getting the long-term results. So yeah, I did use it. Absolutely I did. I think probably everybody did that was doing any type of perio.
But you're not a big fan of it now?
No.
Huh. You've also I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. You've also talked about Revenue Well.
Yeah.
Or what's your thoughts on Revenue? First of all, what is it and why do you talk about it?
Well, Revenue Well is a company that is tied into dental practices intimately in terms of social media. They do so many things. If I'd take it, I could probably spend an hour talking about all the social media related things they do, but I'll give you a couple. One of them is immediate treatment plan follow-up. A patient comes in the office, they get diagnosed and treatment planned. Revenue Well, before they even hit the front door of your office to leave, can either text or email that patient, and they can show them the treatment plan itself, the insurance coverage, the out-of-pocket, and down below there is a little green square, a rectangle, and it says Care Credit on it. And all you got to do is tap that button, and you'll find out if you've been approved through Care Credit to go ahead and do your treatment. Some people don't want to sit around in a dental office with other people there and discuss these things. They want to be more private about it on their own time. They want to go home and talk about it with their husband or significant other. And so they go home and they do that. And they can do it with Revenue Well because they can send it right there as fast as a click of a button with a text or an email. Another thing they do is, let's say you got a crown scheduled for 3:00 in the afternoon. And that procedure cancels at 8:00 in the morning. Their technology integrates with your software and allows you to bring up every patient in that office that has been treatment planned for a crown and has not completed the procedure, and allows you to immediately text or email those patients about a vacant slot in your schedule at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon for a crown. And if you'd like to come in and get it done today, we can accommodate you. So you know how much time people spend going through people's charts and going through computer listings and trying to find everybody's information? They can do it with almost a click with this technology. And there's no contract, which I love about Care Credit. They even have some promos. I've seen them before. I don't know if it's a promo today or not, but they will allow you to put their technology into your office and run it for 30 days. And if you like it, stay with them. If you don't, get rid of it.
You talking about revenue well or Care Credit?
Revenue well.
Okay, you just said Care Credit.
I mentioned Care Credit because they kind of work synergistically, because Care Credit puts their button on Revenue Well's information on the text of the treatment plan, so the patient can just click it and know if they've been approved or not. By the way, yes, I do have Care Credit in my office. That was a perfect storm too, because when I started periotherapy in 87, late 87, I introduced at the same time Care Credit, which made the treatment affordable for the patients and treatable by me, because I was now going to get paid for it. So it was a tremendous adjunct to my practice. I can't imagine running a dental practice without Care Credit.
And what's amazing is when you look at the Care Credit, what I love the most about Care Credit, I don't hear most people talking about, that is, the dentist always thinks that he has all these problems because there's nothing to do with him, and it's the country, the governor, the mayor, the economy, whatever. And then Care Credit can come in and say, here's what all the providers, how much they're financing in your zip code, your county, your city, whatever. And then it's like, okay, doctor, so it's all someone else's fault, but you're in a building with 8 dentists and you you finance the least of this care. I mean, go back to that car. The average new car in America is $33,500, and 5% of the dentists will do a case like about that size every Friday for their whole career. And then 95% of the dentists will never do it one time. And what's really embarrassing, here's what's really embarrassing. When you meet a dentist and the veterinarian across the street is doing more Care Credit on dentistry for dogs and cats than you are for humans.
Right.
It's like, dude, that dog is a dinner in some countries, and they're spending more money on that dog across the street for dental than you are for dental on Homo sapiens.
Well, listen, Howard, I used to have to tell patients, why are you taking your dog across the highway from where I practice is a veterinary clinic. I said, yeah, you go in there for your dog and you have the dog's teeth cleaned. I said, you don't even have your own teeth cleaned. What are we talking about here?
I think everybody. Amazing. And by the way, me and Bob these aren't commercials. We're not getting paid. Care Credit's not going to send us a case of beer for saying this. But you need to get Care Credit to come by your office just to show you what everybody in your town is doing. Because I know dentists, and I remember one time in school, my back got sick because I did this chemistry exam at Creighton, and I missed like 6. And I was like 6 out of 40. I mean, I was ready to throw up. And then I realized that but then you find out on the curve that was an A. I mean, you're thinking, how could 34 out of 40 be an A? It's all the curve. Dentists like that herd mentality. They like to know what everyone else is doing. And when they find out on a report that every dentist and vet is financing more finance for cases, then they start realizing that maybe it's not the Congress, the governor, the trade deficit. They always tell you, well, we're $21 trillion in debt. Well, what does that have to do with your last patient with gum disease?
Well, exactly. And the bottom line is there's nothing you can do about all those conditions with the government anyway. You got to get up every morning and go to work and make that thing work in the office. And Care Credit is such a fantastic adjunct to success financially in dentistry, I think.
And the smartest thing they did is they got away from GE before that thing collapsed. I mean, GE was, when I was in MBA school, Jack Welsh was like, he walked on water. I mean, he was like the greatest business guru of the time. And did you ever think you'd see GE fall from grace like that?
No way.
I mean,
No
just
way.
incredible. But boy, they're so excited to be free from that Loch Ness monster dragged around their throat. So I want you to put your dad hat on. Again, this audience is skewed to the very young. A quarter of the people listening to the show. And by the way, send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. Tell me who you are, what country you live in, how old you are. A quarter of them are still in school, and the remaining three quarters, they're all millennials. So they're coming out, they're listening to you right now. It was so fun at Townie meeting, listening to how people listen to the podcast. I've learned that a lot of them, the millennials, all listen to it at 1.5. They said, you're too old and you talk too slow. So your hour show only takes 40 minutes if I'm listening to it 1.5 or whatever. But the other thing that was very interesting, how many of them listening to it in pairs or groups, where 2 or 3 people will meet and they'll listen to a podcast. And they really do love it because, I mean, how often are you or me going to go lecture in their small town? And here we are coming in right on their phone. But they're young and they're scared because they're deficit. Put your dad hat on. What if that little girl was your daughter walking out of dental school, 25 years old, with $283,000 of student loans? What would you tell her?
Well, you've already told what I'd tell them. First of all, don't get involved in these insurance plans that you're gonna make a nickel on a dollar to be involved in them. I mean, you got to see. If you're running a volume dental practice and you want to practice like that, then that's your thing. Go ahead and do it. But I don't like herding people in and out of my door all day long and trying to shove 4 more down the throat of my hygienist all day. I want to slow it down. I want to raise the standard of care, and I want to make appreciably more money. So what I would tell somebody coming out of dental school with that debt is, if number one, stay away from those plans because you don't need them to be successful. There's always a market, even in a small town that I practiced in for all those years, 1,850 people. There are people, a good percentage of them, that want quality care. And there's always going to be people that want quality care, so offer it. And number two, and get paid for it, which you're not going to do if you're a participating member in a lot of those plans. And the second thing is, make sure you got a structured perio program in that office because look, you and I don't know how old you are now, but
56.
What are you, 56?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm 64. So what I'm going to tell you right now is there comes a time in every dentist's life, and I don't care who you are, male, female, I couldn't care less. At some point in every one of their lives, and when you're in your 20s and 30s, you think you're invincible. Well, it doesn't stay that way. At some point, the back starts to go, the hips start to go, the knees start to go. I've had 4 major surgeries in the last 4 years. I've had 1 hip replaced about 8 weeks ago. I got another one's going to be replaced this year. I've had double back surgery. I've got 2 8-inch rods, 10 2-inch screws, and a cage in my back. And I had developed post-surgical neuropathy, so I have a neurostimulator in my back. So, and this is partly was dentistry and partly was traveling around the country like an idiot for that many years, as many as I was doing. I mean, I was beating my body up pretty bad doing it. Plus, I worked 3.5 days in the office and then traveled to California and come back overnight. I was insane. But anyway, nobody's body's going to hold up forever. And for some of these people, it's going to happen in their 40s. Some people it's going to be in their early 50s, somebody in their mid-50s. But here's the thing. If you don't have something in that office that can allow you to generate money when you're no longer capable or even willing to pay the price physically to make the kind of money you used to make, then you're in trouble. And this is what periotherapy does. It positions the dentist and the dental practice that you can continue to make excellent income in a dental practice every day, whether the doctor sees a patient or not, in terms of restorative. And I'm not knocking restorative, don't get me wrong, but listen to this. In 1971, the number of decayed, missing, or filled permanent teeth in children ages 5 to 17 was 7.1.
It was 7.1?
Yes.
In 1971?
Yes. Easy to remember.
Yeah.
In 2004, that number had dropped to 2.1. So we got it in that time frame. We had almost a 70% drop in restorative needs.
It dropped. Now it dropped from 7.1 to what?
2.1.
2.1. Okay.
Yeah. Now, so the restorative dropped off the tabletop almost 70%, and those kids are no longer kids. By 2004, they're 38 to 50 years of age, and they're not coming into a dental office needing restorative. They're coming into a dental office swamped in perio disease, and nobody talks about it. And the dentist sits there and says, geez, there's no restorative with these people. How am I going to make a living? Because you looked the other way and you didn't even see the perio. That's the problem. And it is the answer. I'll take it to my grave. It's the answer to all problems, in my opinion, in that dental practice. I don't care what the problem is. You got part of that practice you're not liking, put a perio program in there and watch it change. Everything changes.
Well, I can't believe we went over an hour, but I can't let you go with one more question. You got to address periimplantitis because a lot of the talking on Dental Town is very stressful. Especially like, can you imagine if you're that little girl, you graduate from dental kindergarten and you go into practice with your mom, and your mom's got her diplomat at the International Congress of Oral Implantology, and she thinks she's an implant queen, and you're her daughter. And 20 to 40% of these implants that are 5 to 9 years old, like they got periimplantitis all the way around them, and she's just looking at this like, what is going on? So, what is your thoughts on periimplantitis, which seems to be one of the fastest growing problems in all of perio?
I don't have a sample size for 10 years if that's what you're looking for, but I will tell you this: I think it's a maintenance issue, and I truly believe that. I told my patients for years, you can't get a cavity with the implant, but you can lose it due to bone loss and gum disease. So I think it's a maintenance issue. A lot of them don't maintain their normal maintenance schedules for perio, which should be every 90 days, not every 6 months or a year. That's one problem. And then there's nothing to sustain that practice or that patient outside of the office in terms of those implants. And that's where in my office, OraCare comes in, and that's where PerioProtect comes in. And I can honestly tell you, the implants that I've used these products with for these patients, I haven't seen a problem with these implants. Not one, not with anybody. Now, if they're not using it, that's another issue. Or if they're not showing up for visits when they're supposed to see the hygienist, it's another issue. But if they're doing those things, I don't see the issue. So I firmly believe it's a maintenance issue.
And here's something very controversial. One of my idols of all time is Rella Christian. She's an RDH with a PhD in microbiology. Her husband's Gordon Christian, a prosthodontist with a PhD. But Rella says that when she's looking at DMFT and perio, that the 6-month treatment plan, she almost sees no correlation with it lowering DMFT and perio. But at 3 months, it's significant. So the fact that all these insurance plans will pay for a 6-month when there's really not much epidemiological evidence to support that. But at 3 months, it's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell all the doctors that I talk to, I say, this is an issue of education, and you're the one that's got to educate the patient or the patient. You got to educate the patient of the relevance of these 90-day visits. Because what happens here is this disease recycles itself every 90 days in everybody's mouth. And that means the bacteria they miss on a daily basis takes 90 days to go far enough under the gum line, and we all miss some, go far enough under the gum line to reach the tissue attachment, perforate it, and begin to destroy the bone. So the whole thing, I tell them, is nothing more than a race about who's going to get there first, us or the plaque. If the plaque gets there before we get there, they're going to lose bone. If we get there before the plaque gets there, they don't lose bone. And the key to that is 90 days. That you get inside that window, and you're golden as far as maintenance is concerned.
You know, I love the sound of the 90-day visit so much better than 3-month recall.
Yeah.
I mean, that does.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, women have nightmares of losing their teeth. In fact, I saw one study that said something like almost by age 40, almost 90% of all women report having one nightmare of losing their teeth. And men, there's good studies now linking perio to erectile dysfunction. And when they say, well, how does that happen? I say, well, how could you not understand erectile dysfunction? I mean, it's not that hard. So to me, I mean, and then the other thing is I want to tell the younger people when they're looking at all this, where they want to, clean air and clean water and save the whales and all this kind of stuff, what they don't realize is that's a rich man's dilemma. You know, you go back 75 years ago during World War II, they were only trying to win a war. They didn't care about dumping something that they were, you know, these plants. In fact, when General Electric got sued for dumping all that stuff in the river up northeast, they showed them documentation. They asked the Pentagon, where do we pour this stuff? And they said, pour it in the damn river. I mean, nobody cared when you were being bombed at Pearl Harbor. You had the Nazis. But when you get really rich, well, what's the you start
bored.
when you start getting rich, you bid up the prices of luxuries, and the ultimate luxury is to live one more day. So when you you know, we just had the Guinness's Book of World Record just certified the oldest person on Earth. It was a woman, and I divided it, I times it times how many hours she lived. I figured out, and she's lived 1 million hours. And when you start living 1 million hours and you start getting rich, they don't want to lose their teeth. They don't want to lose their health. I mean, the ultimate health is just your health. There's no one who has wealth that wouldn't trade it all for their health. And so I really appreciate what you've been doing. I know you beat yourself up traveling for years and years. You know who you remind me of? The Robert Barkley 2.0. You remember Robert Barkley?
Oh. I sure do.
And he was traveling around the country trying to set up these perio programs. And you know what the dentist actually told him? I am booked a month in advance doing immediate dentures. I don't have time for this garbage. And Bob Barkley had to explain to them, like, do you want your daughter to end up with an immediate denture? Is this your vision for your grandchildren?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, Howard, when I talked about this earlier, and I said, I don't think dentists perceive the financial impact or value of this system in a practice. They say, well, I want to do a crown. Well, do they not? What they don't realize is a perio program generates more income for them than the crown does, and they don't have a lab bill. And if they I don't care if they got a CEREC or not, they're still paying more money to do it than they are going to, you know, be able to generate from the restorative standpoint versus that with a perio. Perio generates and they don't have to do the work to generate the perio. That's the other key.
Well, you just said CEREC, so you got to answer. Is that's another thing? When she's coming out of school, she's like, I'm $283,000 in debt. You know, those Lanap lasers are 140. Those CEREC machines are 140. What would you tell her about buying a CEREC?
It's a luxury, not a necessity.
Right. Well,
not when you're starting.
Well, speaking of luxury, not a necessity, I'm worried that your wife's name is Tiffany. Does that mean she's always going to Tiffany's and buying diamonds and jewelries?
And too much.
Is that why they named her Tiffany? They knew her mom liked jewelry?
Now that I don't know. I actually don't know the reason they named her Tiffany.
But seriously, man, thanks for traveling all over the country for all those years. Thanks for working with Howard Goldstein on an online CE. I'm telling you, the fastest way to reach the millennials is put it on the iPhone or the iPad, and they'll sit there and they'll watch it. And everybody needs a perio program. And if someone's listening to you. Say she's listening and she wants you to set up a perio program for her mom's office. How do you do that?
Well, they can either call me or they can email me. And you know, the number was 309-838-8518, and the email is rtripke@frontier. That's F as in Frank, RONTIER.com.
And just go to Amazon and type in, you can just type in, if you just go to Amazon, click books and put Tripke. He's a trip. Think a trip key. Tripke. But if you go to Amazon, type books and just put in Robert Tripke, Behind the Dental Chair, How Smart Dentists Crack the Code and Build a Dream Practice. Bob, thank you so much for giving me an hour of your life and coming on the show today and talking to my homies. It was an honor to podcast you.
Well, this was my pleasure, much more, believe me, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. Have a rockin' hot evening, and buy no jewelry tonight.
I won't. I'm back in Bloomington. I'm not in Chicago tonight.
What is that, Miracle Mile?
Yeah, I have a condo on the Miracle Mile because my daughter she's a ballet prodigy, so I had to get a condo on Miracle Mile to go up there and live most of my life now.
I love
Until she
Miracle
gets
Mile.
old enough. Oh, it's fantastic.
But the better Irish people are drinking on Rush. Is it Rush Street or Rush Avenue? Rush Street?
Rush Street.
Yeah, I love Rush Street, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But thanks so much again for coming on the show.